Welcome, everyone. It is so good to have you join us. We just really appreciate you participating with us and joining with us in our moments with the Master. Like so many of you, my heart has really been encouraged to see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of American citizens across all races, creeds, and colors who standing against racial injustice, the legacy of racism and bigotry in this country, and to see so many people come together and stand together. What a blessing it is, and I think this is an opportunity for this country to really come out of this a better and stronger country. But as we see the crowds today who've joined together, my heart goes back to those wonderful men and women of the past who in many cases had to stand alone. One was a young man who was born in 1874, Mr. and Mrs. Bowser. They named him George Phillip. And George Phillip, later on they would call him GP. He actually had some very, very difficult storms to recover from in his life. For instance, when he was very, very young, his father and a friend of his was smoking beside some gunpowder, and there was an accident, and his father was killed when GP was at a very, very young age. And then his grandfather, who had stepped in to really be a surrogate father for him, and he was also a wonderful preacher and teacher. GP's grandfather was fishing one day with a friend, and there was an accident, and both of them drowned. And so his mother was left to raise several young children, about 5 of them, alone. But she was a strong, dedicated woman who believed in education, even though she herself was born as a slave. And she taught herself to read, and she passed that down to her children, including George. And she moved to a place where George and the other children could get a decent education. And as George grew and developed, that love for education, racism, and all the storms of life could not extinguish it. And he taught himself and learned through classes 5 languages: Hebrew, Greek, Latin, the languages of the Bible, in addition, German and French. But again, that was another tragic situation. He met a young lady named Fanny, and while they were dating, and one night there was a train coming, and after the train passed by, George went across the track, but he didn't see another train coming in the opposite direction. And when that happened, that train hit him and just mangled his body. He was able to walk again, but he lost the use of his left arm, and it had to be severed, cut off right below the shoulder. Fanny loved him, though, in spite of it, and so they got married. But that education, that love for education, he passed down to other young African-American kids. And so he started a school called Silver Point, and he was the principal, the director there, and mainly from the support of whites. But after a couple of years, it failed. But he tried again. He did not let that stop him. And so in 1920, he started another school. But in that school, they appointed, the funds came mostly from white Christians at the time. And even though the students were all black, the superintendent was white, and they appointed George Phillip to be the principal. But Mr. Doris, who was white, told GP this: you and all of these students must come in the back door. You must come in the back door. Well, GP looked at him and said, that's not going to happen. The man told him, but that's the way it is in the South. That's the way it is. For you and these students to come in the front door means you are equal to us, and you are not equal to us. And you must, even though it's all black, you must come in the back door, you and the students, every time you enter into this building. GP said, it won't happen. The man said, we'll shut the school down, and we'll cut off all funds. GP said, shut it down. shut it down. And so that school closed. No one stood with him. No one supported he and those students at the time, not even some of the other African Americans at the time. One of the famous preachers, Marshall Keeble, at the time, who was very famous and was baptizing hundreds of people, he did not stand with him because Brother Keeble believed that you had to go along with the system to get the money from the whites in order to build black churches. And so GP persevered on. He started another school, which failed. He started another school, which failed. But later in his life, 1948, 1949, two of his proteges, Richard Nathaniel Hogan, J.S. Winston, Levi Kennedy, men whom he had mentored and taught, they got together and they found some property in Fort Worth, in the Lake Como area, and later they found property in Terrell, Texas, that we know today as Southwestern Christian College. That college fulfilled the dream of G.P. Bowser. And from that college, it became fully accredited. And out of that school, thousands of graduates has come through it in the 70 years since then. And doctors, attorneys, CPAs, MBAs, wonderful educators, wonderful church leaders, elders, deacons, just touched the lives of so many. And so here we are now, 100 years later from that day in 1920, when G.P. Bowser stood alone and said, the lives of these black children matters. And he didn't see all that would come out of it, but he saw enough of it for that dream to come true. Listen, friend, do not underestimate the power of one. Paul said in Ephesians chapter 6, I'd like to read for you this that he said. So that when the evil day comes, you will be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. Because he stood, thousands and thousands of young men and women of all colors can stand today. By the way, before we close this, if you want to see living history of that, his great-great-grandson is still touching lives today. His name is Brandon Holt, and he's my friend, and he's serving as minister of the Connect Church in Baytown. Give Brandon a call. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. Bye.